That was a song that Philip, who's at the back of the room there manning the camera, and I wrote a few months ago. And of course it's the subject of today's talk. Now, I'm very new to the circuit, as it were. I've never been to any of these mind, body, spirit festivals, and this is my very first talk. I'm also a first-time author, and the book that I've written is called A Golden Age Economy. And the talk that I'm giving today is really taken from that book. But just before I start, let me tell you a few things about myself. S&M for 18 years. What that actually means is, contrary to what some people might think, is sales and marketing. Sales and marketing. Yes, I spent the first 18 years of my working life working as an employee, a sales rep, working in a shop, working as an area manager, national account manager. And then after that I became self-employed, ran a telephone marketing business, an exhibition organising business, did work for chambers of commerce, big multinationals. I was a sales consultant and a marketing consultant. And then the recession of 1991-92 came, and I suddenly found myself short of cash, so I then became an independent financial advisor. Some of you in this room may even have an IFA. Does anybody have an IFA here that looks after their money? Excellent. So I've done that for the last 20 years. In fact, I gave it up at the end of 2012 because my wife had cancer and I had to look after her. And I just, at that point, just finished writing the book. And because what I've written is so controversial, I knew that I had to leave the industry because they'd come after me if I didn't. So that's that. I've also spent a large number of years studying the teachings of the Ascended Masters through the various mystery schools, Shangri-La, Summit Lighthouse. Theosophia is the way. So that's where my spiritual background comes from. I've been a lyricist and poet all my life, now an author. So I do know a little bit about what I've written about. Right, the agenda today, we've heard the song. What we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through the words to the song and try and explain to you about the funny money system through the words that are written in the song which you've just heard. After that there'll be some questions. If anybody has any questions they want to fire at me. And then after that, if anybody wants to buy a copy of the book, they're welcome to. So why did I call this song Funny Money? Well, by the end of this short tour of our monetary and banking system, I trust that I will be able to answer that question for you, or you'll have that question answered by me, and hopefully convince you that the reasons why the only people who are actually laughing are the bankers who created the system. And they're laughing all the way to their own private bank accounts in Switzerland. These are the people, of course, who created the system, who control it and own it. We are controlled through the money system. Pretty powerful statement. It's really a summation of what the song is really about. But let me sort of elucidate a bit more on that point. How do they control us? Well, if we look at this from a spiritual perspective, there is a 4-letter word beginning with F, which covers it quite well. That word is fear. Fear meaning false evidence appearing real. Now, the type of fear that we are controlled through is a fear of scarcity, meaning a fear that there is not enough resources, not enough land, not enough shelter, not enough food, and not enough money. We are persuaded to accept less so that the people in charge, the power elite, can have more and maintain their power and their privilege. I'm going to read you a quote by one of those people. The gentleman's name is A.M. Rothschild. He made this quote a long, long time ago, and he was the founder of the House of Rothschild. His quote is as follows: "If you allow me to control the nation's money, I do not care who makes the nation's laws, because I know that I can control the nation through the money system." Never was a truer word spoken. Now, part of my book covers the activities of the power elite, and it's the largest part of the book actually. It's a bit of a, it's not a conspiracy theory, because everything that I talk about is actually real and happening, so it's not a conspiracy. But I talk about how the power elite control our planet. The power elite really are those people who are fallen angels reincarnated on earth, and those people who follow their consciousness, follow their activities. So when I talk about the power elite, that's who I'm talking about. Now, the Illuminati is an organisation that is a very important organisation in terms of the control they exercise over us on this planet. And the Illuminati are the followers of Lucifer. And they have an agenda on this planet. And in my book I go through all the key points of their agenda, but there's just three small parts of it which I'd like to read to you. We will focus their attention meaning us, towards money and material goods, so they may never connect with their inner self. We will take over their land, resources and wealth to exercise total control over them. We will establish a money system that will imprison them forever, keeping them and their children in debt. Greedy banks that dominate. Just a few figures, because we want to try and get this into perspective. In 1850, the House of Rothschild, who incidentally financed the Napoleonic Wars and every other war, every major war since then, admitted to being worth £250 billion in 1850. I've seen some estimates that say that their current worth is $500 trillion. Now, nobody truly knows what the Rothschilds are worth, but you can do some calculations, you can build in inflation and what have you, and you will come to many, many trillions. Whether it's 500 trillion or not, I don't know, but it's a hell of a lot of money. To put that in perspective, the total gross national product of the world presently is $70 trillion. In the UK, it's $2.5 trillion. So you can see the sort of power that these banks control. And the Rothschilds control the banking system of the world, effectively. But they have built a Tower of Babel that one day shall disintegrate. You could say that is a prediction of mine. I think it's more than that, because anything that is constructed on this planet, whether it be a policy, a building, or whatever it is, anything that is made that is not beneficial to all people on the planet will eventually self-destruct. It will self-destruct by the laws of karma. Essentially, anything that is negative will surely die. There is a quote that I'm going to read you out about that. That which is not born out of love will surely die. Now, what we have right now is a fear-based economy based on the consciousness of lack, the consciousness of scarcity. Now, fear is a contracting energy. It restricts, it denies, it closes down, and it withdraws. it is austerity in all its guises. George Osborne, are you listening? Whereas love is the expanding, giving, unselfish, sharing energy that is outpictured in the natural world. So the law of karma will deal with a money system that is out of balance because it favours one group at the expense of another. There was a time recently in the last century where Hitler was very, very powerful, but he didn't last very long. The laws of karma dealt with it. In 2008, we saw the beginnings of the collapse of our money system with a credit crunch. Now, this was caused by too much money, meaning too much debt, being created so that the borrowers could not afford to pay back the capital, let alone the interest. And since then, the debt has got even bigger, and so I expect to see another crash, but much worse at some point in the future. The reason that the power elite, the bankers, have been in control for so long, there is a very important spiritual reason for this, and that is because they have amassed a very large amount of the gold that exists in the world that's stored in their vaults, their secret vaults in Switzerland. And because they hold all this gold, they effectively, in spiritual terms, control events on Earth. Because gold is a very powerful substance. It's basically made of sunlight, and it has enormous power to rid us of all negative energy and raise our vibration. Stop perversion of the money system. Right, so how have the power elite perverted the money system? Well, what is money? Let's just talk about what money actually is and what's the purpose of money. Well, the purpose of money is twofold really. It's a medium of exchange, and it's a store of value for when that money is needed for a future time, to be saved when it might be needed in the future. That's really the only purpose that money has. Now, you pervert money when its value is destroyed through the effects of inflation, and inflation is simply caused by having more money in circulation than there are goods and services available to buy. Another form of perversion of money is where money is used to beget more money through the charging of interest, which incidentally is forbidden both in the Bible and the Quran. Now, the system of money that we have in this country at the moment, in fact in most of the Western world, there's only about 10 countries that don't have this system. It's called a fiat money system. Now, that's not something that the Italians invented. A fiat money system is a system where money is created that has no value. It's just pieces of paper. It's not backed by anything of real value. It's not backed by gold. We used to have what they call a gold standard, where all notes that were issued were backed up by gold, either in Fort Knox or in the Bank of England or wherever. But that has all gone. In fact, Gordon Brown sold off all our gold some years back at a discount to all his friends in the Power Elite. So, fiat money system is another perversion because it's not backed by gold. The way the system works is that the state says you will accept this piece of paper in exchange for goods and services. We say is the legal form of money, and that's it. But in reality, if you were, for example, stranded in the middle of the desert, you've got no water, your camel's dying, and you come up to this oasis and there's an Arab there, and he says, and you say, I want to buy that glass of water. You come out with a £10 note. He's not going to be really interested, is he? But if you come out with a gold coin, he's, oh, yes, I'll have that. So, money is not real money unless it has an intrinsic value, unless it is worth something in itself. End this theft of our wealth by stealth. Now, how do the power elites steal our money? Well, the main way they do it is through inflation. By printing far more money than there are goods and services to buy. And to give you some indication of the devastating effects of inflation on the value of money. I'm going to do this in terms of American dollars. In 1913, which was incidentally the year that the Federal Reserve was created, in 1913, $100 bought 5 ounces of gold. But today, you would need $8,200 to buy the same quantity of gold. So that gives you an idea of the devastating effect of inflation. Now, that's theft, incidentally, from all of us. The only thing that has stopped us getting poorer and poorer through the effects of inflation is technology. It's when we have new inventions, when we have innovation, when we find ways of making the same goods cheaper through technical innovation. This is the thing that has prevented all of us from getting poorer and poorer and poorer through the effects of inflation. Theft of our wealth by stealth. Now, the big one is usury. Now, when I use the term usury, I mean the charging of interest on loans. I don't mean excessive interest, I mean just the charging of interest, just to sort of clear that one up. Now, the thing that most people don't know, this is the really big secret, is that the money to pay the interest on a loan is not created by the banks when we borrow, forcing some people to default on their debts, as not enough money is created to pay both the capital plus the interest. Now let me say that again. You go into a bank, you say, Mr. Bank Manager, I want to borrow £5,000 to buy a second-hand car. And he said, yes, okay, Mr. Lincoln, that's fine. We're going to charge you, say it's over 3 years, we'll charge you £2,000 in interest on that. And what he actually does is on his computer screen in the bank, he writes 5,000 as an asset, his asset, and 5,000 as a liability on the other part of the balance sheet. But he doesn't put the interest in, because the interest is not created. So you have to pay back the capital, 5,000, plus the interest, which is 2,000, making a total of 7,000, but only £5,000 is credited to your bank account. So how can you pay it back? Now just multiply that up by all the people on the planet who are borrowing money from the bank. I need to say to you that 97% of all money, 97% of all money is created as debt. Only 3% is notes and coins in circulation. Only 3%. So, we have a system that's been created where money is created, but not enough money has been created to cover the interest. Now this means, by definition, that people will default on their loans because there is not enough money being created for them to pay the interest. So they will default. Now this is a device, a very clever device that the bankers use in order to get their hands on your property, on your houses, on your cars, on your investments when you default on your loan. Because let's understand that money is created out of nothing. All it is numbers on a computer screen. Digital money. It's no longer backed by gold. It's fiat money. It's digital money. It's electronic money. And so they create this system so they can take your goods off you. Now let's face it, land, shares, cars, it's something of real value. Something of real value. Now you're asking yourself, okay, that's fine, but if not enough money is created to pay the interest, the whole system would have collapsed by now. Well, let me tell you that the way the banks have got round this is by keep increasing the money supply by lending more and more and more money to more and more people, even people that have no income, even people that have no assets. They call it the ninja generation, and this is what caused the credit crunch. We got to a point where the amount of money that was being created was so much that people couldn't pay the interest, and so people defaulted. And it started in America, and it echoed all around the world, and it's still going on. So this means that more and more borrowing has to be created so that there is enough money in the system to cover the interest, but there will be times when there isn't enough, as the banks control the creation of money, so people default and have their goods seized. So what you see is a situation where banks one year may lend lots of money, and the next year they won't lend anything. And when they do that, that means more people will default and more goods they can take. So this is really, this usury aspect of our money system is a wealth transfer scheme. It's how the banks get hold of your real assets. And in my book there are some quotes from bankers that explain this system and how they do it. Actual quotes. Now the other way that we theft of your wealth by stealth, speculation is the next one. Now I was an investment advisor for 20 years, investing money on behalf of clients, many millions of pounds. So I know all about markets, and I know all about how it works. And I know that the big players, which are mainly the bankers, manipulate the financial markets to their own advantage, so that they can make as much money out of the unsuspecting investors who don't really understand the system as possible. Because when you think about it, what is speculation? Speculation is gambling. If one person wins on the stock market, somebody else has to lose. That's the way the system works. And I can tell you that the cost of food is affected by speculation on the financial markets. The food company Kraft, who actually own Cadbury's, who own Bourneville, estimated that 20% of the cost of the food they bought was due to the element of speculation, where people speculate on buying something but never take delivery of it. They call it the futures market. So that's another way they take our wealth. Now, what's the stealth element in this? Well, the stealth element really is secrecy. The media is wholly owned by the bankers, all of it. And of course, they don't allow anything to be put on the news or anything that is critical or of the financial system as it exists at the moment. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't some criticism, because there is, but there's no criticism of the system as it has been set up. The other way that we're kept in the dark is through misinformation, through the education system, and there's a lot of misinformation about in the teaching of economics, particularly in university. Because in the university they don't actually teach how money is created. And in fact, it was only until very recently that the Bank of England admitted that the information they'd been giving to the public about how money is created was absolutely false. Abundance is our right in our kingdom. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Yes, it is. It's in all the scriptures. In money, yes. In happiness and in health. In all things. This is the chorus of the song. We don't want no more. We don't want no more. We don't want no more of your funny money. We don't want no more. We don't want no more of your funny money. We have had enough. Now, when people have had enough, they tend to do something about it. They tend to act. So you could say, really, that in the song I am trying to bring that about. Also, this chorus is really a warning shot across the bows of the politicians. Well, I'm just trying to let them know in no uncertain terms that this system that we have, which only is in the interest of a very few people, needs to be changed. And that will hopefully wake them up a bit if there still becomes a bit. Perverted money, something for nothing. Well, I've already explained to you how money is created. I just put the numbers on the computer. It didn't used to be like that. If you go back in history, how did our money system start? Well, it started with barter. Guy had a camel, and he wanted to start a herd of sheep, so he'd swap his camel for a load of sheep, and they would agree how many sheep would equal a camel. So what you actually had there was a transaction of equal value, what was perceived to be equal value. The camel was equal to the sheep. Now, that system is a bit cumbersome because you can't carry camels or sheep around your back pocket. So what happened after that was that they decided to use gold as the means of exchange, because gold is very valuable and it's much more practical, it's smaller. But because gold is valuable, there was always this fear that people would steal it. So all the people that had the gold coins would take them along to the goldsmith, who had a big safe, because he was making things out of gold. Had a big safe. He said, "Mr. Goldsmith, can we put our gold in your safe?" He said, "Fine, fee will be X." So the goldsmiths, who were pretty clever people, thought, "Hang on a minute, there's gold in my safe. Now, my customers only probably want 10% of it at any one time, so I could lend out the other 90% and get some interest on it. And what I'll do is I'll write an I owe you £10 in gold, and people will accept that. And then if they want to bring that I owe you back to me, I'll give them their gold back." Now, this is how our modern money system started. The banknotes that we had originally, if you take a banknote out, it said, "I promise to pay the bearer the sum of £1 in gold." That's the original British banknote. It doesn't say that anymore. They've changed it. And so that was the beginning of paper money. So that was paper money backed by gold. But that's all gone now. It's now digital money. Reaping reward from others' sweat. Well, this is really a reference to bankers sitting on their bottoms, waiting for the interest to roll in. In the Bible, there's been various teachings about multiplying our talents. Now, in the Quran, there are similar teachings about it. And really, in a divine system, people should not be earning interest, because it's not multiplying your talents. And so really, reaping reward from others' sweat is the bankers are sitting down, reaping the reward of your sweat, because you have to do all the work. And they earn all the money. Stealing the value of people's labour with too much money, too much debt. It is not generally accepted by economists that the reason for inflation is more money than there are goods and services to buy. But if you think about it logically, if all the people in this room were all stranded on a desert island, for example, and we said, right, we need to set up a system for living, how would we do it? Well, various people in the room would have different talents. One would be a doctor, one would be whatever, a carpenter, all people making the food, people, farmers and what have you. And people would want to exchange their goods and their services, so we'd have to have some sort of system of exchange. So let's assume, for argument's sake, let's assume that there was a big bag of gold coins hidden, buried somewhere on the island, and there was, let's say, 10,000 of these gold coins. Right, we've got a system for money there. Great. So we'd all do our services, but we can only use those 10,000 coins. That would be the limit of the money supply. Okay? So the cost of things will be determined by the value of the goods that we produce and the amount of money that we've got to exchange them. But if somebody came along and said, hang on a minute, we found another bag of gold, another 10,000 coins, but the amount of goods that we're producing is still the same, but we've now got twice as much money. What is going to happen? The price of goods will go up. In fact, the price of goods will eventually double. So this is the reason, this is the cause of inflation. Anything else is not correct. We're money slaves without understanding of how the system robs us blind. Well, I think I've explained to you already that how usury works, how when you go and borrow money from the bank, they create the capital but not the interest. We've talked about inflation, that robs us blind that way. In fact, inflation really is a tax, is a form of tax. Interest, there was some research done by a German researcher very recently actually to try and establish how much or what percentage of the value of the things that you buy, what percentage interest takes up of the price. So for example, if we talked about this chair being £50, how much of that £50 selling price has got interest in it? Well, actually, has anybody got any thoughts on what it might be? What percentage of the purchase price of that is interest costs? Anybody got any thoughts?
90 something.
How many?
90 something percent.
That's 40%.
Oh, really?
40%, quite a big chunk. So if we get rid of interest, everything will be 40% cheaper. That would be a good start, wouldn't it? Money slaves without understanding. A bit of a heavy one there. When people are preoccupied with earning a living, when the focus of their life is going to work and earning money, and with costs going up, they can never have enough money to pay the bills. You don't have time for spiritual pursuits. You don't have time to come to shows like this and be enlightened and have your consciousness raised. That doesn't happen because you're too focused on the nitty-gritty of earning a living. So this system is fine for the bankers because if people can be kept in a form of slavery, slaves to interest. Now let's look at our children at university now. £9,000 a year just to pay the fees, let alone the living costs. So the average student is going to be leaving university with a debt probably of £40,000, £50,000. They'll be paying that for the next 20 years, I would think. And then they're going to get married and want a mortgage. That's how they keep you enslaved. Also the other way is we're kept in ignorance of how the system works, which is really where I come in. I'm trying to tell people actually how the system works. Penal taxation by inflation. Right, the Bank of England has an inflation target of 2% per year. Now, this to me sounds completely crass. Why would you want to have inflation of 2% a year? Can anybody answer that question in here? Why would you want prices to go up at least by 2%? Well, actually, the reason is, actually, because of the way the prices indexes are calculated and set up, we've got RPI and CPI. RPI is retail price index, that includes mortgage costs. And then you've got CPI, which is consumer price index, which is the one they use now, which is always, I might add, lower than RPI. sound money system. Let's just talk very, very quickly about the sort of system we want that will work in everybody's interests. I've talked about all the bad stuff. Let's just be a little bit positive for a few minutes. The ideal money system is one that's based wholly on gold. So if you can have notes, but there has to be gold backing that note. The other way that the system has to work is that the money is created by the state, not by private banks. It has to be under the control of the people who use the money system. It has to be under our control, not the control of Rothschild. The amount of money that is in circulation has to always equal the amount of goods that are goods and services that are produced. Now, the young lady over there came up with a very interesting point, and I'll try and just cover that quickly. Gold is a divine substance. It grows in the ground. It's made to grow by the elementals in the elemental kingdom. They are responsible for growing gold on the orders of the creator gods. Now, the amount of gold that grows in the ground is determined by the level of the consciousness of the human beings on this planet. So as consciousness rises, as our vibration rises, more gold is grown. So you have from heaven a control mechanism which controls the amount of gold that is actually grown. So the more good stuff we do, the better the money system we have, the more gold will grow, and that will ensure increasing abundance, increasing prosperity.
So is this what you meant by when you were saying the sun and gold?
Yeah.
That confused me a little bit. So yeah.
Okay. We need to find a better way. Yes, we do. Well, the answer, the better way, is in my book, so you'll need to buy that to find out.
How much investment?
£10 to you today.
Is that real money or electric money?
We should make the world with real money. Sorry? That's fiat money. Paper money. I'm going to leave you with a quote. This is the greatest quote, in my opinion, from the greatest economist that ever was, certainly lived in the last 2,000 years. The thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. That's the bankers, the money changers. I am come, that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Very simply, what Jesus was saying is, follow the laws that I have taught you, follow God's laws, and you will have the abundant life. You will have a golden age. Thank you. And the reason for me writing this book is to try and wake people up and say, well, look, this is actually what's going on in your name. You know, you're allowing this to happen. But we have the power to change it.
But the problem is, while the large percentage of the population wants something for nothing, and they see that these loans are a quick fix to get something for nothing, but they don't see beyond that.
Well, I think
Who are we going to reach out to?
what will happen? The law of the universe is, the law of life on Earth, is that if we don't do anything, then we will be slaves of the funny money system. And until we actually do anything, it will get worse and worse and worse, to the point where we say, I can't take it anymore to change it.
What can individuals do?
I'm sorry, sweetheart, can you speak up?
What can individuals do, people like us?
What can you do? There's a whole list of things you can do. It's in my book.
It's all in the book.
Sorry. Here's one book, photograph one. Photograph that book for me.
See, I think what you should do now, but obviously the ideal solution is, I think you should give us all a copy of that book in exchange for every year, and that would be the fair exchange system right back from the beginning, wouldn't it?
Okay,
And then we could all be with you.
I'm going to answer that
and we could
question.
support you on this.
I'm going to spear you on the end of my spear.
Okay.
Now, I have a website. It's called www.agoldenageeconomy.com. On that website, you can buy this book as a hard copy. You can buy it as an e-book on every single format that's out there. And if you are prepared to sit in front of the computer screen for 20 hours, you can actually read the book on my website, free of charge. How's that for you?
That's
We don't want no more, we don't want no more. of your funny money. We don't want no more. We don't want no more. We don't want no more of your funny money. We don't want no more. We don't want no more. We have had enough of your funny money. We don't want no more. We don't want no more. We don't want no more of your funny money. We don't want no more. We don't want no more. We have had enough of your funny money. We don't want no more. We don't want no more. We don't want no more of your funny money. We don't want no more. We don't want no more. We have had